This week on the Pete the Planner Show, we welcome a long-time listener, first-time caller, and it's our first Guatemalan guest on the show. That's right. We are big in Guatemala. I don't know if that's true. Roger joins us on the show now. Hello, Roger.
Hi, Pete. How are you?
I'm very excited. You do know that the national bird of Guatemala is the quetzal? The quetzal?
Quetzal, and it's actually our
currency.
Our coin also. That's the bill we use. You have dollars, we have quetzal.
See, what'll happen throughout this whole episode of Roger's episode is I will be sprinkling in Guatemalan facts. In fact, as Roger and I both celebrate, September 15th, 1821 is when Guatemala became independent. And Roger, I know you feel strongly about that too.
Very much so, yes.
So, Roger, first of all, thanks for being on the show. Second of all, wow, man, you have done an unbelievable job. In the past 10 years or so, you've paid off $100,000 in credit card debt. You've changed your life. Yeah. Tell us what has happened in the last decade for you.
Hopefully I've matured.
Yeah, that helps.
Hopefully that's what I'm. Well, you're 40 and I'm 41, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, you're much more mature than I am. I mean, you were around closer to the time of Guatemala's independence. Much more likely to have been there.
Well, I don't know what's happened in the past decade. I know I haven't been very disciplined, but in the last few years, since my first kid was born, I decided I needed to change my ways. And you've been very helpful, I have to say, and I really do mean this sincerely. In the last 6 months, I've read your books, I've listened to your podcast, and you've helped me make a budget. So,
well,
yeah.
I'll take whatever credit you'll be willing to dish out. Now, you make $115,000 a year. Have you ever lived in the United States, by the way, just so we can try to get on the same ground?
Yeah, I did. I actually lived in Boston for 4 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what, $115,000 in Guatemala, like help me understand what that does.
I'm in the top 5%, definitely.
Okay. And so can you tell us what sort of profession you have there in Guatemala?
I'm a manager of a non-for-profit local NGO working just with rural Guatemalan Mayan women. Mm-hmm.
Wow, that seems like it's quite the niche. All right, so $115,000 a year. You've paid off $100,000 in credit card debt. You're putting $600 a month away to get for your kids' college education, but then also you don't have a 401k because you're in Guatemala, and you don't have a 529 plan. So what are you putting these savings into?
So this is just an international investment account.
Okay.
It's something that I started a few years ago. And it has 70% stocks, about 17-18% bonds, some cash, and I just put $600 automatically there every month rather. But I just started a couple of months ago an investment account at TD Ameritrade that I'm just starting to put some money into, and that's some of the questions that I have actually for you today. If because of my age, I know that something should go to stocks. Another part should go to bonds, but I'm not sure how much, what percentage should go to what.
Yeah, sure. We definitely get into that. A couple other points I want to make sure we hit here. You still have $15,000 in debt that you're trying to get rid of. About how much are you paying towards that on a monthly basis?
Nothing. It's 0% debt. It's actually with my dad. He's totally fine. I talked to him just recently. He said, look, don't worry about it. You pay me when you pay me. But that's something that, it's kind of a moral obligation.
Right.
I want to pay it back. I don't know if I should pay it back. It has zero interest versus, invest a little bit more. I have a couple of debts related to vehicles, and that's really about it.
Excellent. Now, we have your power percentage calculated at 15%. Is that match? Have you ever run your power percentage personally? Have you ever tried to figure out what it was?
I did, and it was 15%. Although I had the question on the life insurance, because it's a term life insurance, and I think I added it to make the calculation. But I after reading again the power percentage, I think it should not be added in, right?
Yeah, we do not include term insurance, so that takes you from 15 to what? Do you think?
I think it's 13 then.
Okay, 13%. But you are $300 a month cash flow positive. That is to say, at the end of every month, you have $300 left over. And what ends up happening with that money, Roger? Does it get saved? Does it just stay there? Do you spend it on whatever? What does it do?
Up to now, we just spend it on whatever. We were just starting an emergency fund. It has about $1,000 now, and we're trying to put what's left into that account before we do anything major like investment or pay off that debt. And I think if we're just a little bit more disciplined, we should have close to $500. So.
No, that'd be great because that would increase your power percentage by about 5% if you're able to set that away.
Wow.
We'd love to get you in the 20% range. Right, you're at 13% by your admission. We would like to get you to 15, to 20%, I should say. Now, help me understand from a housing perspective. Do you rent? Do you own? What's housing like in Guatemala?
We rent, and this is something that I decided many years ago that I wasn't going to buy until I had enough money for a down payment. I didn't want it to have a 30-year debt. And now I just decided, I'm not going to buy a house. I'll be, 65, 70 by the time I pay off the mortgage. I'd rather just rent.
And so what do you pay for that?
$1,600.
Okay. What are taxes like in Guatemala? I have no concept of that either.
Yeah, taxes are very low. We're one of the countries in the world that has the lowest tax bracket for income tax, and my wife and I, believe it or not, we end up paying just over 4% of our income in income taxes. So it's very low. It's very, very low.
And the capital city, of course, everyone knows of Guatemala is Guatemala. It's Guatemala, Guatemala, like New York, New York. Do you live near Guatemala, Guatemala?
I'm 45 minutes away. I lived there until 2 months ago, and my family and I moved to Antigua, Guatemala, which was one of the capital cities a couple of centuries ago.
Right, just southwest of Guatemala.
Just south there. It's a beautiful colonial city, so I'm just going to pitch in a little bit of tourism here. And if you guys want to come, it's only 45 minutes away. Surrounded by beautiful volcanoes.
So in paying down so much credit card debt in that period, how were you able to do it? Did you make the sort of money you make now? Were you making more? Were you making less? Like, how were you able to get rid of $100,000 in debt?
I was making much less, but I was just more disciplined. I think as I increased my income, I've also increased my lifestyle, and that's something that my wife and I have talked about. We're trying to downsize just a bit, prioritize, but it was just, I knew I had debts and I wanted to pay them off, and I was just more disciplined.
Now, are you spending money as your kids age? Is that part of it, or do you feel like truly your lifestyle, the quality of the things you're purchasing? For instance, maybe everyone knows in Guatemala, Blue Denim was created in Guatemala, as was the first chocolate bar, as I mix in the Guatemala facts here today. Are those the things you're buying, or is it just because your family's getting older?
A little bit of both. I'm going to say a little bit of both. Yeah, but we're trying to increase our quality, but not increase our spending. That's what we're trying to focus on right now.
So as I look at your situation, what strikes me is it is really hard to save money for the future when you don't have structured accounts that allow you to do that, right? The lack of a 401k, the lack of a 529 really puts you in a tough spot. I mean, you're in this international investing account, and you think that's about $600 a month you're putting towards that. How much are you putting towards that right now?
Yeah, $600 a month.
And what's the balance of that, do you think?
That's about $18,000 right now. And it should compound through the years. I think the target is to have somewhere near $300,000 in 25 years, I think.
Okay. At the pace that you're putting in right now?
Yeah, without really increasing much.
And then so I think the question becomes, if you have $300 left over each month and you're really trying to push it to $500 left over at the end of each month, is what we're trying to decide, Roger, is exactly what that $500 is to do? Is it supposed to go to an emergency fund to pay down the $15,000 or to go for the long term? Is that what we're trying to determine here today?
Yeah, basically, yeah.
All right. So how much? So you've got 18,000 in that investing account. How much do you have in just boring emergency fund savings?
1,500.
Okay, and $15,000 in a personal debt. I would say I would like to get that emergency fund up to maybe $5,000. Maybe spend a year trying to get that thing up before I would put more of that 500 towards the long term. I don't know. I mean, this is a dumb comment, but go figure. My show is filled with dumb comments. I don't know what an emergency financial situation looks like in a country like Guatemala. I don't know if you can find yourself in a lot of $10,000 jams or $50,000 jams or $1,200 jams for that matter.
Yeah.
But is it common for something to cost you like a life event $2,000? I mean, it's sort of, again, dumb question, but you know what I mean?
No, I think the worst case scenario is us, having some medical emergency and we have to pay the deductible on our insurance, which is no more than $5,000. I think that would be the worst case scenario. But anything else, I'm guessing it should be less than $1,000, and we could easily pull from that money from that pocket.
And so you make 115, and you mentioned your wife. Does she work as well?
She works as well, yeah, and that's all together. So
Okay.
I make 81,000, and she makes the rest.
Excellent. Yeah, this is interesting. I mean, are you going to have to pay college for your kids? Do you think they'll come stateside, or do you think they'll go to college in Guatemala?
Whichever they want, but as parents, we would love if they have an international experience, and that's what the $600 a month is going towards, to just have enough money, enough cash that we can pay for their college, either in the U.S. or Europe or.
So I guess what I'm trying to figure out is you got low taxes. You guys make $115,000. Your rent is $1,600 a month. That's your biggest expense by far, but what's your next biggest expense? I'm trying to figure out where all the money's going.
The car loans, that's about $1,000 or $1,200
Wow.
a month. Two cars.
What's
Yeah.
up with that?
Excuse me?
What's up with that? Like, why so expensive? Is it different down there somehow, or are you just driving
It's
nicer
different.
cars?
It's different. No, it's just regular Fords, but it's different. They're much more expensive here, and the interest rate is also higher for vehicles.
All right, do you know how much longer you have on those cars before they're paid off?
Yeah, one should be paid off by December of next year, and that's the highest one. That's 750
Okay.
by December of next year. And the other one should be paid off by September of 2021,
Ooh.
and that's 350.
Okay. So the one for next year, that's great because that helps give you more money on a cash flow basis to try to get through things. Are there other major factors? Do you have like daycare or education expenses right now?
Yeah, private school. Really, the public educational system is not, very good. So we send our kids to private school, and that's about $800 between the both of them.
All right, so the $800 between the both of them. So this is all clear to me now, right? Because your transportation costs are extraordinarily high. Your private school education, based on what your income is extraordinarily high. Even though you have a low tax environment, you've got no structure to what to save into for these big life events. You're doing a really good job balancing what is an uphill battle because there's not a lot of things going in your favor. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. You have to drive an expensive-ish car. You have to pay for private school education, and you have no structure, which makes things not great, But you're doing a good job. And again, I think the best way to get your power percentage higher is to make sure that $500 a month is for at least the next 6 months to 9 months going to fill up your emergency fund. And then this time next year, or maybe 16 months from now, your car will be paid off and you'll be able to add that money to it. And then we're closer to $1,000 a month of positive cash flow. And that's where things start to get interesting.
Yeah. I think it's next year that's going to be just a little bit more of a challenge, right? Till when I pay off that car loan, I think I'm going to just feel less stress.
Now, tell me, do you plan on living in Guatemala for the rest of your years? Do you plan on moving around or what?
If anything international comes up, we'll probably move around. My wife lived in Washington, D.C. for a couple of years. I lived in Boston. So we want to give our kids that experience. We only had it when we were already grown up and right after school. But if anything comes up, we might give it a try, yeah.
Yeah, see, that's interesting because then it's almost like what we need you to do now is to continue to be cash flow positive, to get those healthy savings habits. And then when you come back stateside, what you do get then is the structure to save towards retirement. And hopefully at that point in time, again, it's like riding a bicycle. You already know how to do it. It's just a matter of flowing the money into the right vehicles.
Right.
How much in term life insurance do you have?
250, which I think it's too low. I want to get at least another 250.
I would definitely get another 250. Now, is that purchased for? Is that purchased in Guatemala, or did you purchase this back stateside?
It's purchased in Guatemala, and it's not really expensive. It's only $1,200 a year, so $100 a month.
Okay, yeah, I would consider. I would consider increasing that for sure.
Okay.
But I mean, again, you've come a long way. You got some weird things sort of going against you, just in terms of how financial structure works there in Guatemala. And I think the key would be just to keep your eye on your power percentage. If I'm you, I try to get it to 20% by the end of this year, and I try to go a couple percent a year there forward, so that way you're at 40% or so when it comes time to look at retirement, and then you're not so dependent on your income. Do you get pay raises, cost of living adjustments there in Guatemala? Are those common?
Yeah, it's usually the rate of inflation. So for next year, it's going to be somewhere around 4.5.
Okay.
And every once in a while, I get a bonus, which, I haven't, not till now, really decided what to do. Before that, I would just spend.
Yeah, it's interesting as we think about that. Your inflation rate is 4.5%. A 4.5% raise is pretty fantastic, unless of course the cost of living goes up 4.5%, and then it's sort of a null thing. What's healthcare like in Guatemala? How do you pay for that?
It's private. The same thing with education. So the public health system is not high quality, and we have private health insurance, which is about $3,000 a year for the four of us, which is not expensive if you compare it to what something like that would cost in the U.S., but still, we have to buy it.
Excellent. Any other questions for me? With this episode, what I really want to do is not only, of course, congratulate you on what you've done, try to give you a little bit of a path of what to do forward, but also just expose the audience to the differences of living in a different country. I mean, just the different factors of, sure, low tax rate, higher inflation, higher cost of transportation, higher cost of education. But is there anything else that we can assist you with? Is there any other questions we can answer?
No, but you really opened my eyes to not having the structure and how difficult that is. I hadn't realized that, and it's really tricky because if you have to decide where to put the money, it's not easy or make it automatic.
It's really weird if you look at self-employed people who make a pretty good living. They struggle to save more than a employed person in a traditional job who makes less money because of that lack of structure. And before 529 plans here in America, people struggled to save for college. Of course, it wasn't that expensive either, but they struggled because of the lack of structure. So I would tell you this, you obviously understand the financial system more in your country than I do. Look for opportunities to create structure. If there's little incentive programs or little savings programs, get involved with them because I think you need that extra layer of accountability.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Well, I love it. I got to drop a couple more fabulous. Tell us your favorite Guatemala. What do people not know about Guatemala, other than they should go and visit? What do people need to know?
We're just 2 hours away from Miami International Airport. That's how close we are.
Really?
Yeah. And it's called the country of the eternal spring. That's the weather we have. It's just beautiful all year round, and it's really tourist country that everyone should come.
Well, I do know this. It's the number one manufacturer, producer of jade. Everyone should know that. Also, what kind of fishing do you have in Guatemala?
I think it's open water. I think, well, I know you're into bass, which
Right.
is very different, but I think it's called open water. So we have some of the best marlin and mahi mahi that you can find anywhere in the world.
Oh my God! Well, Nicole, book the tickets. We're taking the show on the road to Guatemala. Oh, it'll be great. Well, Roger, thank you so much for sharing this with us. Again, get your power percentage to 20% and send us an email update, of course, or just post on our Facebook repeaters page if you ever happen to be on there. All right?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Pete. It has been fantastic. I appreciate it.
No, it's my pleasure. All right. This has been this week's episode of Pete the Planner Show. I almost forgot the name of the show. I love it. Listeners from all over the world. But no matter where you live in the world, you need structure to get your power percentage higher. 15% is solid. Need you at 20. I need you at 20 and push it 2% higher every year. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go to PeteThePlanner.com/power percentage and learn more. Or go to episode 120 of this here podcast, and you will learn everything you need to know about power percentage. That's all we have time for this week. I'm Pete the Planner, and this is my show.